so these ideas of like designing complexity and creating these sort of interesting overlapping urban situations, I think happens so interestingly on two different scales here, because the city as a whole is the beauty of it is the complexity that is undesigned and uncontrolled, but then you have the malls or the artificial environments that are like a perimeter of let's say ultimate control, but with very little criticality, or like no judgment.
There is new models of malls emerging in which it's not only the holistic idea of like, okay, you create a box and everything that is inside you control it, but there is particularly two malls in the center in Siam Square that are really interesting in two different ways. Rather than designing the interior of the mall, rather than visualizing what the mall inside would look like, the architecture seemed to have taken a step back and become purely infrastructure for a mall to take place. And then they were, I guess, very clever in choosing which were the businesses that were going to open there, and then let every single one of them do whatever they wanted within that infrastructure. It doesn't seem that there was so many regulations, so the environment inside is incredibly rich. Everyone created their own shop, and it seems like because of the type of people that was there, no one was going to do anything conventional. So walking around, it is really a fantastic street, a really nice street. And all the surfaces of the mall, all the installation, everything is black, everything goes away. It's pure infrastructure.
Which is, of course, the success that, like, it's super interesting because they have erased the box. Like, the mall, which you could think of it just as a box, then it's also behind the stage, the curation of the whole thing as an experience. And they're incredibly skilled at doing this. But it's really like you can see the future, I think, of these artificial environments where the box itself is for the person experiencing it. In the perception, it's erased in the favor of the content instead.
Yeah. But then the mall becomes planning, like urban planning at the mall scale, right? Where you are only kind of curating who should you put together. It's so interesting in that mall that the third floor, it's really interesting. The second floor, it's almost just like as any mall. And it's only because of the shops that are in there, right? What are they willing to do, or how much are they willing to innovate? So it seems like a curatorial process, but it's so interesting to see that layering and how something completely different is going on.
The perception of the space is then purely semiotics, and whereas normally the conventional artificial mall has a big white surfaces and you need to follow the rules, the big glass sheets, and which means that like mentally in the experience of it, your eyes are trying to follow the lack of intricacy, which means that your mind is transported like much faster than your body, which means that it becomes a boring experience. Whereas a space like Siam Center, where when you try and plan your route on like kind of millisecond level, the foreground, background, and midground are, it's not curated as such, but because of the complexity it creates for a very like dynamic experience. So I think one of the reasons why we stay here and why we really like it here is because these things are happening in a really progressive way, in the freedom of judgments. Here you can have the freedom of being anti-cerebral in your kind of way of thinking about these things.
And then also the lack of, bureaucratically, in terms of regulations, and people, it's kind of very brave in the way they invest. We deal with these issues in academia, but we still enjoy them as everyone else does. I like malls. I really like being there, which I guess maybe is the difference, but I don't know if Remcolas likes to be in shopping malls or Venturi like to be
in
Las Vegas.